feeling stuck in the same place, waiting for the perfect moment that never comes? The truth is, transformation doesn't wait for motivation, it demands action, especially when it feels impossible. What if you could break free from hesitation and unlock unstoppable momentum by simply forcing yourself to move forward? This isn't about luck or talent, it's about mastering the mindset that turns resistance into power. In this video, you'll discover how to push past doubt, crush excuses, and rewrite your reality by taking control of your actions, because real change starts when you refuse to wait any longer. 1. The moment you decide enough is enough. Every meaningful transformation begins with a decision, and more specifically, a breaking point. This paragraph captures a universal truth. People rarely change their lives when things are comfortable, even if they're dissatisfied. The real catalyst is the moment discomfort becomes unbearable, when the pain of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of change. Psychologists call this an emotional tipping point, and it's often the spark that ignites a major shift in behavior, habits, and identity. The opening line, "Every major transformation begins with a breaking point," isn't just an observation, it's supported by behavioral science. Studies on habit change, such as those by Dr. Prochaska and Dr. DiClemente in their Stages of Change model, show that people only move from contemplation to action when they experience a moment of decisive clarity or emotional intensity. This enough is enough moment strips away rationalizations and forces you to acknowledge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Without that emotional jolt, many stay stuck in the earlier stages, thinking about change but never committing to it. The paragraph points out that most people never reach this breaking point because they've learned to tolerate discomfort. This is a concept known in psychology as learned helplessness, originally studied by Martin Seligman. When individuals repeatedly experience undesirable situations, they feel powerless to change. They eventually stop trying, even when opportunities to escape or improve arise. They normalize the discomfort. They convince themselves that this is just how life is, which becomes a mental prison. Over time, this resignation erodes ambition and self-belief, locking them into cycles that drain energy, motivation, and hope. The line about settling into routines that slowly drain them speaks to how human beings adapt to almost any environment, even one that's unhealthy. This is called hedonic adaptation. We get used to our circumstances, good or bad, until they feel normal. Someone can be in a job that bores them, a relationship that limits them, or a lifestyle that harms them physically and emotionally, yet still remain, because the pain is gradual, not immediate. Gradual discomfort is dangerous because it's easier to justify and harder to break free from. It lacks the urgency that sudden crises create. That's why the next part of the paragraph is so important. Change doesn't happen when conditions are perfect. It happens when you force yourself to confront the brutal truth. This is backed by real-world evidence. Waiting for perfect conditions is a form of procrastination disguised as planning. In business, in personal growth, in fitness, there is rarely a moment where all factors align perfectly. The people who change their lives are not those who waited for the right time. They are the ones who acted when the timing felt uncomfortable but necessary. This is consistent with the action bias phenomenon, where taking decisive steps often creates momentum that waiting never will. The brutal truth referenced here, "If you keep doing what you're doing, nothing will improve," is an example of what psychologists call future pacing. By projecting the current trajectory forward, you can visualize exactly where your present habits will lead. This technique is used in coaching and therapy to help people see the inevitable consequences of inaction. Often seeing that future clearly is enough to trigger the breaking point. For example, someone in poor health might suddenly decide to overhaul their lifestyle when they visualize the long-term medical consequences of continuing their current habits. The sentence, "That discomfort you feel," that's not a sign to retreat, it's a signal to act, flips the common instinct people have toward discomfort. Most are taught to avoid it, yet discomfort is one of the most reliable indicators of growth potential. Neuroscience research on neuroplasticity shows that when we engage in difficult, uncomfortable actions, the brain rewires itself to adapt and become more capable. In short, discomfort is often evidence that you are approaching a threshold of growth. Avoid it, and you avoid progress. We can also look at this from a performance psychology perspective. Elite athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders often have a defining moment where they decide mediocrity is unacceptable. That's their enough is enough point. Michael Jordan being cut from his high school varsity team, Oprah Winfrey being told she wasn't fit for television, or J.K. Rowling facing rejection from a dozen publishers. All of these moments could have been accepted as reality. Instead, they became the emotional ignition that drove relentless effort. Without that inner line in the sand, none of their stories would have unfolded the way they did. The reason this moment is so powerful is because it collapses excuses. Before the breaking point, people can justify their inaction. Not enough time, not enough money, not enough skill. After the breaking point, those excuses don't matter because the cost of staying the same has become too high. The mind shifts from "can I do this" to "I must do this." That shift from optional to non-negotiable is often the difference between abandoning a goal and achieving it. For your audience, this paragraph is a call to examine their own tolerance for discomfort. It's asking them, have you been normalizing a reality that is draining you? Have you been telling yourself that this is just how it is when deep down you know it's not sustainable? Are you waiting for the perfect moment to change, knowing that moment will likely never come? If so, the discomfort you feel right now might be the exact signal you need, not to step back but to step forward. Ultimately, the moment you decide enough is about reclaiming agency. It's about realizing that no one is coming to make the change for you. There is no perfect rescue, no ideal set of conditions. The turning point will not appear until you create it. And the creation of that turning point almost always begins with a personal declaration. This ends now. I will not live this way anymore. Once that decision is made, everything changes. Not because the external world shifts instantly, but because you do. Your mindset changes. Your actions align with your intentions. Your tolerance for the things that drain you disappears. And that's when transformation truly begins. Not at some random point in the future, but in the exact moment you decide you will no longer accept anything less than the life you are capable of living. 2. Your reality is a mirror. Let's start with the metaphor itself. A mirror doesn't lie, it doesn't distort, it reflects. If you don't like the image you see, breaking the mirror won't change the reflection, changing yourself will. The paragraph uses this image to highlight a common psychological defense: externalizing responsibility. Many people find it easier to blame external forces, bad luck, unfair systems, other people, because it removes the discomfort of self-examination. But psychology and behavioral science show that individuals who accept a high level of personal responsibility consistently report higher levels of life satisfaction and achievement. This is linked to what psychologist Julian Rotter called locus of control. People with an internal locus of control believe they influence their own outcomes, while those with an external locus believe their life is dictated by outside forces. Research shows that an internal locus correlates with greater motivation, persistence, and resilience. The line, "if you don't like what you see, the mirror isn't the problem, you are," is blunt but necessary. It pushes past ego protection and forces acknowledgement of personal agency. While it's true that external circumstances, economic shifts, family background, unforeseen events can affect your reality, the majority of your long-term results come from how you respond to these factors. Two people can face the same challenge and produce entirely different outcomes based on their mindset, decisions, and persistence. This is why ownership is so powerful. It gives you influence over the direction of your life, even if you can't control every single event. The paragraph is careful to state, this isn't about blame, it's about ownership. That's an important distinction. Blame is backward-focused, it locks you in guilt or resentment. Ownership is forward-focused, it asks, what can I do now to change this? This is the same principle used in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, where clients are encouraged to take responsibility for their thoughts and behaviors not as a form of self-punishment, but as the gateway to change. When you accept that your daily actions created your current results, you also accept that new actions can create better results. When you claim full responsibility for where you are, you take back control of where you can go. This is a direct rejection of victim mentality. Victim mentality says, life happens to me. Ownership says, life happens through me. The difference is profound. Victim mentality keeps you powerless because the cause of your dissatisfaction is always outside of you. Ownership returns the power to you by making you the cause and therefore the solution. Neuroscience supports this mindset shift. When people believe they can influence outcomes, their brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning and decision-making, activates more efficiently, leading to better problem-solving. The paragraph notes that most people will resist this truth because it's easier to point fingers. This is true both psychologically and socially. From a psychological perspective, taking responsibility threatens the ego. It forces you to admit your own flaws, laziness, or poor decisions. From a social perspective, blaming external forces is often reinforced by others who may empathize with your complaints but unintentionally encourage inaction. That's why breaking out of this mindset often requires both self-awareness and a willingness to stand apart from the crowd. The moment you admit that your actions, habits, and choices built this reality, you unlock the power to rebuild it. This statement aligns with the principle of cause and effect. Your life today is the effect of choices you made over time. These include the obvious career decisions, financial habits, and the subtle, the people you spend time with, the content you consume, how you spend your spare hours. Once you acknowledge that these accumulated into your current reality, the next logical conclusion is that you can alter your future reality by altering your present causes. In habit formation research, such as the work of James Clear in Atomic Habits, the concept is simple. Small changes in behavior, applied consistently, compound into significant results over time. Finally, the mirror will always show you exactly what you've been doing. Serves as a reminder that reality is feedback. If your relationships are strained, your body is unhealthy, your finances are unstable, or your environment is chaotic, these are not mysteries. They are reflections of your priorities, boundaries, and actions. This isn't meant to be harsh, it's meant to be liberating. Because if you can see the connection between cause and effect, you can start making intentional changes that shift the reflection. For your audience, this paragraph is an invitation to stop arguing with the mirror. Instead of wishing your reflection looked different while repeating the same actions, they can start asking, what choices brought me here? Which of those need to change? What standards have I been accepting that I know I should raise? That level of honesty is uncomfortable, but it's also the birthplace of transformation. When you stop breaking the mirror and start changing the person in it, you stop being trapped by your current circumstances, you start designing them. And when you live with that level of ownership, the reflection always gets better because it's no longer accidental, it's intentional. 3. Destroying the comfort trap. The line, "the enemy of transformation is not struggle, it's comfort," aligns perfectly with what we know about human behavior. Struggle is often the catalyst for change because it creates tension between your current reality and your desired reality. In psychology, this tension is called cognitive dissonance. When the gap becomes uncomfortable enough, you're motivated to close it through action. But in comfort, there's no urgency, just enough satisfaction to tolerate dissatisfaction. That's why comfort is the perfect trap. It doesn't feel like a trap, it feels safe. Comfort convinces you that it's not the right time to change. This is a powerful point because it addresses one of the most common rationalizations for inaction: waiting for the perfect conditions. Research on procrastination, such as that by Dr. Piers Steele, shows that people often delay important actions not because they are lazy, but because they overestimate how much easier or better it will be to start later. This illusion is fueled by comfort. The truth is, there will never be a perfect time to change. Waiting for that moment is like waiting for the wind to blow in exactly the right direction before you start walking. You end up standing still forever. This lesson goes on to say, and every time you listen, you cement yourself deeper into the same life you claim to want to escape. This is the compounding effect of inaction. Every decision not to act reinforces your current patterns. Neuroscience calls this myelination. The more you repeat a behavior, whether it's taking action or avoiding it, the stronger the neural pathways become. That's why habits, good or bad, feel automatic over time. If you keep choosing comfort over progress, you're training your brain to default to comfort even when you consciously want something different. Forcing yourself to change your reality means actively making decisions that disrupt your comfort. This is a critical distinction. Transformation is not just about making different choices, it's about making choices that are deliberately uncomfortable. Waking up earlier when your bed is warm, speaking up in a meeting when you'd rather stay quiet, ending a relationship that no longer aligns with your values, even if it's familiar. These actions feel uncomfortable because they challenge the brain's natural preference for stability and predictability, a phenomenon known as homeostasis. The brain loves balance, even if that balance is keeping you stuck in a life you no longer want. The examples in the paragraph, waking up earlier, having hard conversations, choosing discipline over indulgence, are concrete because they show the mechanics of disrupting comfort. Each of these choices requires delayed gratification, the ability to forego immediate pleasure for a greater long-term reward. This skill has been studied extensively, most famously in Walter Mischel's Stanford marshmallow experiment, which found that children who could delay gratification tended to have better life outcomes decades later. In adulthood, delayed gratification is the foundation of sustained success in health, finances, relationships, and personal development. Comfort is seductive, but it kills more dreams than failure ever will. This line is a sobering truth. Failure has a clear effect. It forces you to face reality and adjust your approach. Comfort, however, can keep you in a holding pattern indefinitely. It offers just enough satisfaction to prevent you from risking something greater. This is why so many people look back after years and realize they've been living the same year on repeat. Comfort didn't destroy them, it just kept them from ever truly living. From a biological standpoint, our tendency to seek comfort is an evolutionary survival mechanism. In prehistoric times, conserving energy was essential because food and resources were scarce. The brain evolved to avoid unnecessary risk and exertion. But in modern life, where survival is not the primary challenge, this same mechanism works against us. Comfort seeking keeps us safe from physical danger, but it also keeps us safe from emotional growth. It shields us from failure, rejection, and uncertainty, the very experiences that lead to progress. For your audience, this paragraph is an urgent call to examine the role of comfort in their lives. It's not saying comfort is always bad. Rest and recovery are essential. But when comfort becomes the default state, it becomes a slow-acting toxin. The question isn't whether you deserve a break. It's whether that break has become an excuse. Destroying the comfort trap means developing a bias toward discomfort, not recklessly but intentionally. It means scanning your life for the areas where comfort is keeping you from growth and making small, deliberate choices that push against it. Over time, these small disruptions compound into a new baseline, one where action feels more natural than avoidance, where discipline feels more rewarding than indulgence, and where progress feels more satisfying than safety. Comfort will always be there waiting for you, but so will your potential. The choice between them isn't made once, it's made every day. And if you keep choosing comfort, you may never face the pain of failure, but you'll face something worse, the quiet regret of never knowing what you were truly capable of becoming. 4. Reprogramming the mind. The human mind is an extraordinary system, but it's also deeply conservative in how it operates. Its primary function is not to make you successful, it's to keep you alive. That's why it instinctively resists change. From a neurological standpoint, the brain prefers familiar patterns, even if those patterns are harmful, because familiarity signals safety. This is tied to the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear and threat. When you attempt to step into something unknown, whether it's starting a business, changing careers, or ending a toxic relationship, the amygdala triggers a fear response. It whispers that you're not ready, that this could fail, that staying where you are is smarter. These warnings feel real, but they're often outdated survival instincts, not objective truth. Research in neuroscience shows that the brain is essentially a prediction machine. It constantly references past experiences to decide how to respond to present situations. If your past is filled with playing it safe, avoiding risks, and sticking to what you know, your brain will keep predicting that change equals danger. This is why many people feel stuck, not because they're incapable of change, but because their brain is recycling old programs. Those mental programs operate like computer code. If the code says avoid risk, your actions will reflect that, regardless of your conscious intentions. Overwriting these patterns requires intentional reprogramming, and that starts with changing inputs. The paragraph's point about feeding the mind with new inputs, books, people, environments, challenges, is grounded in the concept of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. The more consistently you expose yourself to new ideas, skills, and experiences, the more you weaken the old circuits and strengthen the new ones. For example, reading books that challenge your thinking activates different neural networks than passively consuming entertainment. Spending time with people who inspire and push you creates new mental associations about what's possible. Environment plays a critical role in this process. Studies in behavioral psychology show that environment often shapes behavior more powerfully than willpower. If you are surrounded by people who settle for mediocrity, your brain normalizes mediocrity. If you immerse yourself in spaces where ambition, discipline, and growth are the norm, your brain begins to treat those as the baseline. This is why deliberate environmental design, choosing where you spend time, what you expose yourself to, and who you engage with, is a powerful tool for mental reprogramming. Challenges are also essential inputs. They provide the friction that forces adaptation. From a biological perspective, growth happens in response to stress, but not all stress is harmful. Psychologists refer to eustress as positive stress, challenges that push you out of your comfort zone without overwhelming you. When you take on challenges, you force your brain to create new problem-solving pathways. Over time, these pathways become the new default responses, replacing fear-driven avoidance with action-driven confidence. The mind truly functions like a machine. It runs whatever program you install. If your current mental operating system is based on fear, self-doubt, and limitation, you can't expect it to produce bold action or transformation. But if you consciously install programs of discipline, curiosity, resilience, and opportunity-seeking, those become your default processing patterns. This isn't wishful thinking, it's the logical outcome of consistent input and repetition. The same way an athlete's muscle memory is built through repeated physical practice, mental memory is built through repeated cognitive and emotional practice. One of the most effective ways to speed up mental reprogramming is through deliberate self-talk and visualization. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, has repeatedly shown that thoughts influence feelings, which influence actions. If you constantly tell yourself, "I'm not ready," your actions will align with hesitation. If you train yourself to think, "I'm becoming ready," or "I can figure this out," your brain starts searching for supporting evidence, altering both perception and behavior. Visualization works in a similar way. When you repeatedly imagine yourself succeeding at a task, your brain activates the same neural pathways it would use if you were actually performing it, making it more familiar and less intimidating over time. It's also important to understand that reprogramming isn't an instant process. The brain's old patterns are often deeply entrenched, sometimes built over decades. Breaking them requires consistent exposure to the new patterns until they become stronger than the old ones. This is why occasional bursts of motivation are less effective than sustained, small changes in daily habits. Just as software updates happen line by line, mental updates happen choice by choice, input by input. Once the default thinking aligns with the life you want, not the life you're trying to escape, you stop sabotaging yourself. Fear may still appear, but it no longer controls your decisions. Doubt may whisper, but it doesn't override your actions. The new program takes over, guiding you toward choices that match your vision. At that point, your brain isn't pulling you back to old patterns, it's pulling you forward toward your desired reality. Reprogramming the mind is ultimately about reclaiming authorship over your mental code. It's refusing to run outdated survival scripts that keep you trapped and choosing to write new ones that are aligned with growth, purpose, and possibility. The inputs you choose today become the outputs you live tomorrow. Change the inputs, and over time the entire operating system changes with them. When that happens, the life you once thought was impossible starts to feel inevitable, because your mind is no longer working against you, it's working for you. 5. Ruthless self-assessment. Stripping away excuses and looking directly at the facts is one of the most confronting and liberating actions a person can take. It forces you to see yourself and your life without distortion, without the protective layers of justification, selective memory, or wishful thinking. This is uncomfortable because the human mind is wired to avoid psychological pain. We use self-deception and cognitive biases, such as the self-serving bias, to maintain a positive self-image, even if it means staying blind to the behaviors that keep us stagnant. But true transformation begins where denial ends, and that's why ruthless self-assessment is a non-negotiable first step. The reason most people avoid asking, "Where do I actually stand?" is because the answer demands accountability. If you acknowledge that your health is poor, you must also acknowledge the habits that caused it. If your finances are unstable, you must confront your spending patterns or lack of income strategies. Facing these facts often threatens the ego, which is why avoidance feels safer. However, avoidance doesn't remove the consequences, it only delays them. This is why many remain in what psychologists call vague dissatisfaction. They sense something is wrong but never define it clearly enough to force change. The act of writing things down, your income, your physical condition, your skills, your relationships, your mental health, is powerful for both psychological and neurological reasons. Writing externalizes your internal reality, moving it from a subjective feeling into an objective record. Studies on self-monitoring show that people who track specific aspects of their lives, such as food intake, exercise, spending, or time use, are more likely to improve in those areas simply because awareness disrupts autopilot behavior. The brain, when presented with concrete data, can no longer hide behind vague impressions. In behavioral science, this is connected to the principle, what gets measured gets managed. If you don't quantify a problem, it's nearly impossible to solve it effectively. For example, someone who vaguely feels broke might not realize that unnecessary subscriptions, frequent takeout, and impulse purchases are consuming hundreds of dollars each month until they see the numbers in black and white. Similarly, someone who feels out of shape might not grasp the extent of their inactivity until they log their daily movement and see that they average only a few hundred steps outside of work. Sugarcoating is one of the biggest enemies of progress because it distorts reality just enough to make inaction feel justified. People soften the truth by saying things like, "I'm just big-boned," instead of acknowledging unhealthy habits, or "I'm not good with money," instead of admitting they avoid financial education. This self-protective language might shield self-esteem in the short term, but it erodes growth in the long term. By contrast, a ruthless self-assessment replaces emotional excuses with factual clarity. It's not about labeling yourself as good or bad. It's about understanding exactly where you are so you can chart a precise course forward. The sting of seeing the truth is often the exact catalyst needed for change. Discomfort creates urgency. When you look at a spreadsheet and realize you're living beyond your means, it forces a decision: keep repeating the pattern or take immediate corrective action. When you track your time and see that you spend more hours scrolling on a phone than building skills, the illusion of not having enough time collapses. That moment of undeniable truth is where transformation begins, because it closes the gap between perception and reality. From a practical standpoint, the process of ruthless self-assessment works best when it's comprehensive. That means looking at every key area of life: finances, health, skills, relationships, mental state, because weaknesses in one area often bleed into others. Financial stress can impact mental health. Poor physical health can reduce energy for career growth. Lack of skills can limit earning potential. Relationships can either support or sabotage your progress. By assessing all areas, you uncover not just isolated problems, but systemic patterns that hold you back. Psychologically, there's another reason this process works: the contrast effect. When you establish a clear baseline, any improvement feels more tangible. For example, if you document that you can currently run only half a mile without stopping, running a full mile a month later is undeniable progress. Without the baseline, that improvement might go unnoticed and uncelebrated, which reduces motivation. Of course, there's a difference between ruthless self-assessment and self-criticism. The goal isn't to shame yourself, it's to equip yourself. Facts are neutral until you attach meaning to them. If your income is low, that's simply a number, not a definition of your worth. If your relationships are strained, that's a status update, not a permanent condition. By keeping the tone objective, you avoid triggering the defensive reactions that can lead to further avoidance. The ultimate power of ruthless self-assessment lies in the shift it creates in decision-making. When you have accurate data about your life, you stop making guesses and start making informed moves. You stop relying on hope as a strategy and start designing specific actions. Over time, this precision compounds into meaningful change because your progress is based on reality, not illusion. The starting point for every lasting transformation is the moment you face the facts without distortion. That's when you stop living in a fantasy version of your life and start engaging with the actual one. The facts might sting, but they're not your enemy. They're your roadmap. They show you exactly where you are so you can decide exactly where you want to go. And the sooner you take that inventory, the sooner you can begin building the version of yourself and your life that you truly want. 6. The pain of change versus the pain of regret. Every significant decision in life involves some form of discomfort, and this truth is unavoidable. You can experience the short-term discomfort of changing your habits, confronting your fears, and stepping into uncertainty, or you can experience the long-term ache of looking back on wasted potential. These two types of pain operate differently in both psychology and life trajectory. The pain of change is acute and temporary. It exists because you are forcing your mind and body to adapt to something unfamiliar. The pain of regret is chronic and permanent. It exists because you avoided adaptation and stayed in a state of decline. Change feels uncomfortable because it disrupts the brain's preference for stability, a phenomenon known as homeostasis. Your mind and body are designed to conserve energy, avoid risk, and stick to familiar patterns. This is why starting a new workout routine feels exhausting, learning a skill feels frustrating, and ending a toxic relationship feels frightening. even when you logically know these changes are good for you. Your brain interprets unfamiliar effort as a potential threat, triggering resistance in the form of procrastination, self-doubt, or anxiety. But when you persist through this discomfort, the body and mind recalibrate. What was once hard becomes normal, and the pain fades. Regret, however, follows a different path. It's not an immediate, sharp sensation. It's a lingering awareness that opportunities were lost and cannot be recovered. Studies in psychology, particularly the work of Dr. Neil Rose on regret, show that people's most enduring regrets come not from actions they took, but from inactions, the things they never attempted, the risks they didn't take, the dreams they postponed until it was too late. While the pain of change tends to lessen over time, the pain of regret often intensifies because as life moves forward, the gap between what is and what could have been becomes harder to ignore. When you refuse to force yourself out of your current reality, you aren't choosing comfort, you're choosing regret in slow motion. The years pass and the window to take certain chances closes. The career you could have pursued, the business you could have built, the relationships you could have deepened, all of them become hypothetical scenarios instead of lived experiences. Neuroscience even shows that the brain replays regrets more vividly than successes, because the emotional weight of loss imprints more deeply than the satisfaction of achievement. The distinction between the pain of change and the pain of regret can be thought of as the difference between investment and debt. The pain of change is like making an upfront investment. It requires effort and resources now, but it yields returns in the form of growth, opportunity, and fulfillment. The pain of regret is like accumulating debt. It may feel easier in the moment to avoid payment, but over time the cost compounds until it becomes crushing. The lesson points out that the pain of change comes with growth. This is supported by the concept of eustress or positive stress, which challenges you without overwhelming you. When you take on a challenge that pushes you outside your comfort zone, your mind and body adapt to meet the demand. This is why physical training builds strength, why learning difficult skills builds competence, and why having hard conversations builds deeper relationships. The discomfort you feel is the signal that growth is happening. It's the friction required to move you forward. By contrast, the pain of regret comes with decay. Decay in this sense is not just physical, it's mental, emotional, and even spiritual. When you stop challenging yourself, your skills stagnate. When you stop taking risks, your opportunities shrink. When you stop making meaningful efforts in relationships, they deteriorate. Over time, the life you have narrows into something smaller than the life you could have had, and that shrinking produces a kind of quiet suffering. It's not loud like the immediate strain of change, it's a dull, persistent weight that grows heavier with each passing year. The most important takeaway is in the final line. If you have to suffer either way, why not choose the kind of pain that builds you? This reframes the choice entirely. You can't escape discomfort, you can only choose its form. Pain from growth is purposeful. It transforms you into someone stronger, more capable, and more aligned with your potential. Pain from regret is purposeless. It keeps you locked in memories and hypothetical scenarios you can never act on again. One makes your future larger, the other makes your past heavier. For someone standing at a decision point, this distinction is crucial. The resistance you feel toward change is temporary. It will fade as your new actions become habits. But if you let that resistance win, the regret that follows will not fade. It will grow sharper every time you think about what might have been. This is why some of the most successful people are those who decided early on to lean into the short-term discomfort of change rather than protect themselves from it. They understood that the cost of inaction would be far greater in the long run. Life does not offer a no-pain option. It only offers a choice between the pain that shapes you and the pain that diminishes you. Choosing the former requires courage, but it's the only way to ensure that when you look back decades from now, you feel gratitude for the chances you took, instead of grief for the ones you avoided. When faced with that choice in any area of life, health, career, relationships, personal growth, the question is simple: will you endure a temporary challenge now, or will you carry a permanent question mark for the rest of your life? 7. Shattering old identity. Changing your life often requires changing far more than your actions. It requires dismantling the self-image you've been carrying, sometimes for decades. Identities are powerful because they act as the blueprint for your behavior. If you see yourself as the shy one, you will unconsciously make decisions that align with shyness, avoiding social opportunities, keeping your opinions quiet, and sidestepping situations where you might be noticed. If you view yourself as the broke one, you may not even attempt to learn financial skills or pursue higher income opportunities because in your mind they don't fit who you are. These identities feel safe not because they are good for you, but because they are familiar. Familiarity gives the illusion of safety, even when it's a prison. From a psychological perspective, this is tied to self-concept, the set of beliefs you hold about yourself. Self-concept influences behavior through a phenomenon called self-verification theory, which suggests that people seek confirmation of their existing self-views, even if those views are negative. For example, someone who believes they're unreliable might unconsciously make choices that lead to missed deadlines, not because they want to fail, but because the outcome matches their internal identity. This creates a feedback loop. Your identity shapes your actions reinforce your identity, and the cycle continues. The challenge is that these identities are often built on outdated information. Many are formed in childhood or adolescence, when external labels from parents, teachers, or peers become internalized. Being called shy as a child might have simply meant you were more observant or cautious, but over time the label calcified into a defining trait. Similarly, struggling financially in your early 20s might have been a temporary circumstance, but repeating "I'm just bad with money" solidifies it into part of your self-definition. Without questioning these identities, you can end up living under limitations that no longer have any basis in your current reality. Breaking these old identities requires what psychologists call self-reappraisal, actively challenging and reframing the beliefs you hold about yourself. The first step is awareness. You must notice the moments when you speak or think in ways that reinforce the old identity, such as saying, "I can't stick to anything," or "I'm just not good at that." Every statement you make about yourself is like a micro-investment into that version of you. If you want a new reality, you have to stop investing in the old one. The lesson's advice to bury the old identity without ceremony is crucial. Many people hesitate to release an identity because they treat it as part of their core personality, fearing that letting go will make them lose a sense of self. But identity is not fixed, it is malleable, and it can evolve to serve your goals instead of trapping you. In fact, research on identity-based habits, as discussed by James Clear, shows that long-lasting change happens when you adopt a new identity first and then align your habits to match it. Instead of trying to act like a disciplined person while still thinking of yourself as lazy, you declare "I am a disciplined person" and begin making choices consistent with that belief. Over time, the identity becomes self-sustaining. Language plays a critical role in this transformation. Words are not just descriptions, they are instructions to your subconscious mind. Neuroscience has shown that the brain responds to self-talk as if it were a direct command. When you say "that's just how I am," you're telling your brain to preserve the current state indefinitely. This is why affirmations, when used correctly, can be powerful. They are intentional statements that program your mind toward a desired identity rather than an outdated one. Of course, shattering an old identity doesn't happen overnight. Your brain has built neural pathways that correspond to that identity, and those pathways don't disappear immediately, but they weaken with disuse. Every time you act in a way that contradicts the old identity, you break the chain a little more. A shy person might speak up in a meeting, a broke person might take a financial literacy course, a quitter might commit to finishing one small project, no matter how insignificant it seems. Each of these actions sends a signal to the brain: we are not who we used to be. There's also an emotional component to this process. Old identities can be comforting even when they're painful because they absolve you from responsibility. If you're just bad at relationships, you don't have to do the hard work of self-awareness and communication. If you're just unlucky, you don't have to take risks. Letting go of these labels means accepting full ownership of your future, and ownership is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. The moment you stop speaking about yourself in ways that reinforce the life you no longer want, you create space for a new identity to take root. This is not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about removing the mental barriers that prevent you from becoming who you could be. Your identity is not a life sentence. It's a choice you make every day through your thoughts, words, and actions. When those three elements align with your desired self, the old identity loses its grip, and your behavior naturally shifts to match the new one. Ultimately, the cage is not made of steel, it's made of stories. And the most dangerous story is the one that begins with "that's just how I am." Shattering old identities means rewriting that story, replacing it with one that expands your possibilities instead of shrinking them. Once you do that, your actions follow, your opportunities multiply, and the life you once thought was out of reach becomes the only one you can imagine living. 8. Building relentless habits. The life you experience right now is the direct outcome of the behaviors you repeat on a daily basis. Habits are the invisible architecture of your reality. They either quietly construct the life you want or silently dismantle it. Wishing, visualizing, and setting intentions have their place, but without consistent constructive routines to back them up, they produce little tangible change. This is because outcomes are not determined by what you occasionally do in moments of inspiration. They are shaped by what you repeatedly do when no one is watching, especially on the days when you don't feel like it. From a behavioral science perspective, habits operate on the principle of automaticity. The brain is designed to conserve energy, so it converts repeated behaviors into automatic responses. This means that once a habit is formed, it requires far less mental effort to perform, freeing up cognitive resources for other tasks. The challenge is that this process works for both beneficial and destructive behaviors. If you habitually procrastinate, overspend, or avoid challenges, your brain will automate those responses just as readily as it automates exercise, saving, or learning. The emphasis on consistency over motivation is crucial. Motivation is a fluctuating emotional state, heavily influenced by mood, environment, and external events. Research from Dr. B.J. Fogg and other behavioral scientists shows that relying on motivation is unreliable for long-term change. By contrast, habits remove the need for constant willpower because the action becomes part of your identity and daily rhythm. When you identify as someone who works out rather than someone trying to work out, the action is no longer a decision, it's an expectation. Building relentless habits requires overcoming the brain's natural resistance to effort. This is where the concept of identity-based habits, popularized by James Clear in Atomic Habits, becomes essential. Instead of focusing solely on results, you focus on becoming the type of person who naturally produces those results. For example, rather than aiming to save $10,000, you adopt the identity of a person who always manages money wisely. The repeated actions that reinforce that identity, tracking expenses, automating savings, avoiding impulse purchases, then occur almost without negotiation. The lessons examples: exercising when tired, saving when tempted to spend, studying when you'd rather relax, capture the defining trait of relentless habits. They persist in the absence of ideal conditions. This aligns with the psychological concept of implementation intentions, which are pre-decided plans for how you will act in specific situations. By deciding in advance, when I finish work, I will go to the gym no matter how tired I am, you reduce the mental friction that leads to skipped actions. Over time, the behavior becomes so ingrained that it feels unnatural not to follow through. It's also important to understand the compound effect of habits. Each individual action may seem small, one workout, $1 saved, one page read, but when compounded over months and years, the impact is transformative. This compounding can work for or against you. Consistently eating 200 extra calories per day might not show for weeks, but over a year it can add 20 pounds. Conversely, consistently writing 500 words a day could result in an entire book in less than a year. Your habits are the silent forces moving you closer to your goals or pulling you further away from them. To build habits that truly last, the design of the environment matters as much as willpower. Behavioral economists and psychologists emphasize choice architecture, the idea that you can structure your surroundings to make desired actions easier and undesired actions harder. Keeping healthy food in plain sight and removing junk food from your home reduces the need for constant self-control. Setting up an automatic transfer to savings ensures that money is put away before you have the chance to spend it impulsively. The easier a habit is to perform, the more likely it is to stick. There's also a neurological reward system at play. The brain releases dopamine not just when you achieve a goal, but when you anticipate the reward from a habitual action. This means that over time, the act of engaging in the habit, such as putting on running shoes or opening a book, can trigger satisfaction before the full reward is even experienced. This reinforcement loop helps solidify the behavior. However, destructive habits exploit the same system, which is why breaking them requires replacing them with alternatives that offer a similar sense of reward. The statement, "You are not your intentions, you are your repeated actions," is more than motivational, it's a psychological fact. Intentions are predictions about what you think you will do. Actions are the measurable reality of what you actually do. Research consistently shows a significant gap between intention and behavior, known as the intention-behavior gap. Closing that gap requires systems and structures that ensure action happens whether or not you feel like it in the moment. Relentless habits don't just change your schedule, they change your self-perception. Each time you follow through, you cast a vote for the type of person you believe yourself to be. Over weeks and months, those votes accumulate until the identity becomes unshakable. At that point, your habits stop feeling like discipline and start feeling like self-expression. You don't exercise to stay on track, you exercise because you see yourself as someone who values health. You don't save money because you have to, you save because you see yourself as financially capable. Your future is hidden in your daily routine. If you want to change your life, you must change what you repeatedly do, not once in a while but every day, regardless of mood or circumstance. The transformation doesn't come from one grand act of willpower. It comes from hundreds of small, consistent acts that over time become who you are. When your habits are relentless, your results become inevitable. 9. Redefining your environment. Lasting personal transformation is nearly impossible if you remain in the same environment that created the very patterns you are trying to break. Environment is not neutral. It is either actively supporting your growth or silently anchoring you to your past. Every detail in your surroundings, people, spaces, conversations, routines, works like a constant feedback loop, reinforcing the habits, beliefs, and emotional states that dominate your daily life. If those conditions were part of the old reality you want to leave behind, continuing to live in them is like trying to grow a new tree in soil that's already depleted. Behavioral science has consistently shown that human behavior is deeply shaped by environmental cues. The theory of situational influence explains that our surroundings often dictate our actions more than conscious intention. If your kitchen is stocked with processed snacks, your likelihood of eating them is dramatically higher, regardless of your nutritional goals. If your friends regularly engage in negative or unproductive conversations, your own mindset is likely to mirror theirs through emotional contagion, the unconscious transmission of moods and attitudes. Even subtle aspects such as lighting, noise levels, or the organization of your workspace can alter your focus, energy, and decision-making. The idea that the strongest will in the world will struggle to thrive in toxic soil is not metaphorical. It is supported by decades of research on willpower and self-control. Studies by psychologist Roy Baumeister have shown that willpower is a finite resource. When you constantly have to resist environmental temptations or battle negative influences, you deplete that resource faster, leaving less energy for pursuing your goals. In contrast, an environment that aligns with your intentions reduces the need for constant self-control, allowing your energy to go toward constructive action rather than defense. Redefining your environment requires deliberate and sometimes uncomfortable choices. One of the most impactful is reassessing the people you spend the most time with. According to social psychologist Dr. David McClelland, the people in your immediate circle can account for as much as 95% of your success or failure in life outcomes because they shape your standards, normalize your habits, and either expand or limit your vision of what's possible. Cutting ties with draining relationships is not about cruelty. It's about removing persistent sources of resistance to your growth. The people you surround yourself with should challenge you, inspire you, and hold you to a higher standard, not anchor you to old versions of yourself. Physical space is another powerful lever. The layout, cleanliness, and functionality of your home or workspace can either accelerate your progress or quietly sabotage it. For example, if you want to read more, keeping books visible and within reach increases the likelihood you'll pick one up. If you want to exercise regularly, placing your workout gear where you see it daily reduces the friction to getting started. Environmental design is about making the desired action the path of least resistance while making undesired actions more difficult. Your conversational environment is equally important. The topics you regularly discuss, whether with friends, colleagues, or online communities, affect your mindset and priorities. If the majority of your conversations revolve around gossip, complaints, or nostalgia for the way things were, you'll find it harder to stay future-focused. Conversely, spending time in spaces where discussions center on problem-solving opportunities and growth-oriented ideas keeps your mental environment aligned with your goals. One of the most underestimated aspects of environmental influence is place-based association. The brain forms strong links between certain locations and the behaviors that typically occur there. If you've always procrastinated in a particular room, just being in that room can trigger the mental state associated with avoidance. Changing your environment, whether by rearranging furniture, working in new locations, or even moving to a different city, can disrupt these associations and create space for new patterns to take root. Redefining your environment is not about perfection, it's about alignment. Even small adjustments can have outsized effects. Decluttering a workspace can improve focus. Curating your social media feed to follow inspiring, educational, or goal-oriented accounts can shift your daily mental inputs. Joining a gym, co-working space, or mastermind group can physically place you among people whose habits and values match the future you want to create. These shifts may seem minor in isolation, but collectively, they reshape the default settings of your life. The reason environmental change is so effective is that it operates continuously without requiring your conscious attention. While motivation fluctuates and willpower drains, your environment is always present, always sending signals, always shaping behavior. When you design it intentionally, it becomes a silent partner in your transformation, reinforcing your desired identity every day without the constant battle of resisting the old. Thriving in toxic soil is nearly impossible, no matter how disciplined or determined you are, but plant yourself in fertile ground, surround yourself with people, spaces, and ideas that challenge and nourish you, and growth becomes the natural outcome. The future you want is not just a product of who you are, but where you allow yourself to exist. When your environment is aligned with your potential, you don't have to fight for every inch of progress, you can grow into it. 10. Refusing to return to the old reality. Change is a process that extends far beyond merely reaching a new milestone or achieving a fresh level in life. True transformation is not simply about arriving at a different place or adopting new habits temporarily. It is about permanently altering one's mindset and emotional framework so profoundly that returning to the previous state becomes an impossibility. This kind of irreversible change demands an intentional and often difficult severing of ties with the past, mentally, emotionally, and behaviorally. When someone undergoes a significant change, there is often a lingering attachment to the old reality. This attachment can manifest as old habits, thought patterns, environments, or relationships that serve as mental safety nets. They act as just-in-case plans, subtle doors left ajar in the mind that allow a fallback option. Even if these old elements are not actively engaged with, their mere presence in one's life keeps the past accessible. During moments of difficulty, stress, or uncertainty, the mind naturally gravitates toward familiar territories as a coping mechanism. It seeks comfort in what is known, even if that familiarity was once harmful or limiting. This phenomenon can be understood through the lens of neuroscience and psychology. Human brains are wired to conserve energy and minimize risk by relying on established neural pathways, habits, and thought processes that have been reinforced over time. These pathways form what can be described as mental highways that the brain travels on autopilot. When change attempts to redirect the brain onto new paths, the old routes remain easier and more accessible and less deliberately blocked or burned. To solidify new ways of thinking and living, one must effectively burn the bridges to the old routes so the brain no longer has the option to revert during times of stress or temptation. Emotionally, this process is equally demanding. Letting go of the old reality involves grieving what was lost, the comfort of the familiar, the identity previously held, the relationships or roles that defined one's life. It requires accepting uncertainty and vulnerability, because the new reality often comes without guarantees. It might be less comfortable at first or even frightening, but it holds the promise of growth and fulfillment. Emotional commitment to the new reality means investing deeply in this uncertain future and consciously rejecting the fallback on old patterns. Practically, refusing to return to the old reality involves removing or transforming environmental cues that trigger previous habits or mindsets. This could mean changing social circles, altering daily routines, or redesigning one's physical space to support new behaviors. Behavioral science shows that environmental cues heavily influence habits. By changing these cues, it becomes harder to slip back into the old ways unconsciously. In essence, the external world must reflect and reinforce the internal commitment to change. Sustained commitment also requires a mindset of no compromise. The moment a person allows even a small possibility of going back, it opens a door that the mind will inevitably try to walk through when challenges arise. Change is rarely a linear or smooth journey. Setbacks, doubts, and struggles are natural. Without firm resolve and the closure of these mental and emotional exit routes, the risk of relapse is high. The old reality, with its familiar comfort and predictability, exerts a powerful gravitational pull that must be consciously countered. Real-life examples of this concept can be seen in recovery processes, whether from addiction, toxic relationships, or destructive habits. Successful recovery often involves creating an environment where old triggers and temptations are removed or avoided entirely. This is why support groups emphasize changing routines, avoiding certain people or places, and making new commitments that don't leave space for the old behaviors to sneak back in. Similarly, career or personal reinvention requires a similar all-in approach, where one's identity is reshaped so thoroughly that reverting is not viable. This approach aligns with findings in behavioral change research. Studies indicate that willpower alone is insufficient for lasting change. Instead, restructuring one's life to eliminate fallback options leads to higher success rates. Commitment must be holistic, cognitive, emotional, and environmental to make the new reality the only accessible path forward. In short, refusing to return to the old reality means making a definitive and irreversible choice to move forward. It demands burning the mental and emotional bridges that link to past ways of living, eliminating any just-in-case contingencies that allow retreat. Only when these pathways are fully closed does change become permanent. The new life becomes the sole option because the old life can no longer reach or influence the individual. This level of commitment transforms change from a tentative experiment into a permanent evolution of self. What you're about to hear is not casual encouragement. It is a shift in how you confront resistance, in how you interpret struggle, in how you carry yourself when the pressure feels unbearable. Because here's the truth, every achievement worth having has one unshakable ingredient: you simply never give up. We romanticize persistence when it's far away. We put it on posters, we nod at it in books. But when you're in the middle of it, when your idea has failed twice, when the job you needed said no, when you've been trying for months and the results are still invisible, that's when persistence becomes ugly, heavy, lonely. That's when most people quit, not because they couldn't win, but because they couldn't carry the weight of continuing. You need to understand this. Quitting is not a moment, it's a slow erosion, a quiet surrender in your mind long before your body stops moving. It's when you start to say maybe later, maybe I wasn't meant for this, maybe this is enough, and in that moment, the moment you let those thoughts in, your momentum bleeds away. The dream doesn't die because it was impossible, it dies because you gave it permission to. So what if you made one rule for yourself starting today? That no matter the delay, no matter the rejection, no matter the embarrassment, you will not quit. Not as a motivational slogan, not as a cute caption, but as a law you live by, a contract with yourself that is not negotiable, because once quitting is off the table, all that's left is figuring it out. History is littered with men and women who weren't the fastest, the smartest, or the most gifted, but they were the ones who refused to leave the field. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb on his first try, or his 10th, or his 100th. It took over 1,000 documented attempts. That wasn't luck. That wasn't a miracle. That was refusing to give up even when every sign said stop. J.K. Rowling was rejected by a dozen publishers before one finally said yes, and she wrote the early drafts of Harry Potter as a single mother, unemployed with almost no resources. That was showing up again when the world told her no. This isn't theory, this is the pattern. The people you admire have one shared habit: they kept moving forward when it made no sense to, and that's the decision you face now. Will you be the one who folds at the first wall, or the one who climbs over it, crawls under it, or knocks it down, no matter how long it takes? From this moment forward, your standard must be clear. I finish what I start. I stay in the fight. I do not give my dream an expiration date. Say it out loud right now, not a whisper, not a hope, a command. I will not give up. I will not quit. No matter what happens, I stay in the fight, because the world bends to the man or woman who refuses to stop walking. Most people quit right before they were about to win. They think they're far from the finish line when in reality they're inches away. But here's the problem: when you can't see the result yet, when you've been grinding for weeks, months, years, and the scoreboard still reads 0, your mind starts whispering, maybe this isn't working. Maybe this was never meant to be. And if you listen to that voice, you'll never know how close you were. This is the brutal truth. The moment you feel like you've reached your limit, The moment your energy is gone, your options are exhausted and your belief is paper thin, that's often the final gate before the breakthrough. Why? Because success isn't just about skill or resources, it's a stress test. The universe, the market, the opportunity, they push you to the edge to see if you're serious, to see if you're the type who will stay until it bends in your direction. You've seen this pattern in every field. Roger Bannister ran the first sub-4-minute mile in 1954, but before him, athletes had tried for decades, convinced by experts that it was physically impossible. Do you know when he broke the record? In a year when his own training was interrupted, when the weather on race day was bad, when the signs said not now. He did it anyway, and within a year, dozens of runners broke the same record. Not because they got faster overnight, but because someone proved it could be done, and suddenly the wall in their minds fell. The same thing happens in business, in art, in personal goals. The barrier is often mental first, physical second, and the mental barrier is the one that takes most people out. They get to the hardest part, the plateau, the stall, the dark stretch where nothing is working, and instead of pushing through, they interpret it as failure. But the plateau is not failure. The plateau is the training ground for the next level. Think about it. When you start something, your energy is high. You're fueled by novelty and excitement. Progress comes fast. Then the inevitable slowdown happens. You hit the wall. The results stop matching the effort. And here's the fork in the road. Most will quit, some will pause and never return. But the rare ones keep going without evidence. And those are the ones who find the breakthrough. Science backs this up. In skill development, there's something called the plateau effect. It's the period where measurable progress stalls despite continued effort. Neurologically, it's because your brain is consolidating skills, strengthening pathways, and adjusting to higher demands. But because you can't see that happening, it feels like nothing is working. Most people bail before the brain has finished rewiring. They leave during the build. That's why your job is simple. Stay in the game long enough to let the work catch up to the result. Edison faced this. 10,000 failed prototypes before the light bulb worked. Do you think every single day of that process was exciting? Do you think every morning he woke up believing 100% that today's the day? No. He had days where his team doubted him, where his resources were almost gone, where logic said to stop. But he understood the law of persistence. You only have to be right once. And the only way to get to that once is to keep showing up. The tragedy is that most quitters will never know if they were 10 steps or 10 minutes away from their win. They stop digging a foot before hitting gold. They pack up the tent the night before the sun rises. They forget that the edge of exhaustion is also the edge of expansion. Let me be direct with you. If you are in that phase right now, if you've been grinding and the needle hasn't moved, you are likely closer than you think. The resistance you feel is not proof you should stop. It's proof you're in the right place. It's the last defense before the door opens. The question is, will you push once more, or will you retreat and tell yourself the lie that it just wasn't meant to be? This is why never giving up is more than stubbornness. It's strategy. It's understanding that outcomes are not evenly distributed over time. Sometimes you'll see nothing for months, then everything will happen in a single week. But you only get to that week if you stay in long enough to see it. From this moment when you hit that dead zone, I want you to flip the script. Instead of saying it's not working, say this is the moment most people quit, and that's exactly why I won't. Because persistence is a filter. It removes the casual, the half-committed, the ones who only wanted it when it was easy. The world is full of people who almost made it. The ones you remember, they're the ones who stayed. So if you feel tired, if you feel stuck, if you feel like giving up, good. You've reached the place where most people fold. That means you're now in rare territory. Push one more time, take one more swing, make one more call. Because you might be closer than you'll ever realize, and you don't get that proof until you push past this exact moment. Say it with me. I will not stop here. I will not walk away when the gate is in sight. I will outlast this moment, and I will break through. If you're going to live by the law of never giving up, you must learn something most people never master: how to turn a setback into fuel. Because here's what's guaranteed. If you stay in the game long enough, life will hit you. It will knock you sideways. Your plans will unravel, your timeline will stretch, and your confidence will get tested until it feels paper thin. This is where average players lose the plot. They think a setback is a signal to stop. They treat a failed attempt as a verdict instead of feedback. But here's the truth: setbacks are the tuition you pay for success. Every single person who has achieved something lasting has paid it. The only difference? They didn't waste the lesson. Look at history. When Steve Jobs was fired from his own company in 1985, most of the world saw it as a career-ending humiliation. But Jobs didn't disappear. He built next, he bought Pixar, and years later he returned to Apple with more vision and fire than before, launching the iPod, iPhone, and iPad. The very setback that could have ended him instead sharpened him into the leader who transformed entire industries. Or take Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, 27 years where the world could have forgotten him. But instead of letting bitterness rot his spirit, he used that time to refine his vision, strengthen his resolve, and build the inner discipline that would allow him to lead South Africa through its most fragile transition. His prison cell became a classroom, his setback became a springboard. Science supports this too. Psychologists call it adversarial growth, the phenomenon where facing significant challenges leads to greater resilience, deeper purpose, and improved problem-solving. In other words, hardship, when handled correctly, makes you better. The challenge is that most people never stay in the discomfort long enough to see the growth. They exit at the first sting of pain. You need a different rule. When something goes wrong, when you lose the client, miss the target, or watch a plan collapse, your first question is not why me, but what is this trying to teach me? Because here's the reality. Every setback carries two packages. One is pain, the other is data. Most people only open the pain and throw away the data. Winners extract the data, then use it to make the next move stronger. Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That wasn't empty optimism, it was reframing. He understood that every failed attempt was reducing the list of wrong answers, making the right answer inevitable. Without the patience to mine those lessons, there would be no light bulb. The same applies to you. That missed opportunity, it's showing you where your preparation was thin. That rejection, it's telling you how to sharpen your pitch or target the right audience. That delay, it's training your patience and adaptability, both of which are essential for staying in the game long enough to win. You need to start treating setbacks as proof of movement. If you're failing, it means you're in the arena. If you're being tested, it means you're building capacity. And the only way to lose for good is to quit before the lesson turns into progress. Here's a strategy. Every time you take a hit, write down 3 things. What actually happened? Strip out the drama, just the facts. What I can control next time. The piece of the outcome I can directly influence. How this can make me better. The skill, mindset, or process this forces me to upgrade. Do this every time, because most people will replay the pain until it becomes their identity. You're going to replay the lesson until it becomes your advantage. And don't mistake fuel for comfort. This isn't about pretending setbacks feel good. They don't. They sting, they frustrate, they exhaust you. But persistence is built in these exact moments, not when everything is going right, but when you decide to stay in motion despite the blow. Remember, the greatest wins often have the heaviest prelude of setbacks. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper job because he lacked imagination. Oprah Winfrey was told she was unfit for television. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school varsity basketball team. Each of them could have taken those moments as final judgments. Instead, they treated them as starting points. And because they did, they rewrote not just their own stories but the expectations of everyone who came after. So when you get knocked down, and you will, don't waste the pain, convert it, let it feed you, let it harden your resolve, let it force you to get sharper, smarter, and stronger than you were yesterday. Say this to yourself when the next setback hits. This is not the end. This is the raw material for my next victory. I will mine it, I will use it, and I will keep moving forward, because the only way a setback becomes permanent is if you make it your stopping point. And if you've decided to never give up, then every setback is simply another brick in the road you're building, and you're not done until it's finished. Persistence is not just about showing up today, it's about showing up tomorrow, next month, next year, with the same fire in your chest when the applause has faded, when the novelty is gone, and when no one is watching to see if you still care. That's endurance, and without it, never give up is just a catchy phrase. Most people think they fail because they weren't capable enough. In reality, they fail because they weren't durable enough. They treated their dream like a sprint, all-out speed, maximum effort, and burned themselves out before they ever reached the real test. The truth is, anything worth building exists on a timeline longer than you expect. You think it's going to take 6 months, it takes 5 years. You think one big push will do it, instead you need 1,000 small ones. That's where endurance comes in, the ability to keep going at a pace you can sustain until the goal is yours. Look at the people who actually finish the climb. They are rarely the ones who started with the most talent, money, or connections. They are the ones who built a system for staying in the game long after their competitors ran out of steam. Endurance is not built in hype, it's built in habit. It's in your morning routine when no one's checking. It's in the hours you put in after a long day when most people have already given up for the night. It's in the discipline to do your work even when the motivation is gone, because motivation will vanish, and you can't afford to vanish with it. There's a principle endurance athletes know well. Pacing is power. If you start a marathon sprinting at full speed, you might lead for the first mile, but you'll collapse before the finish. The winners know how to conserve energy for the moments that matter most. They build consistency before intensity, and the same applies to your mission. The point is not to go all in for 30 days. The point is to still be moving with strength at day 300, day 1000, day 3000. Take the story of Colonel Harlan Sanders, the founder of KFC. He didn't even begin franchising his fried chicken until he was in his 60s. Before that, he'd been fired from jobs, failed in business, and spent years living in a small apartment, surviving on his savings. He knocked on more than 1,000 doors before someone agreed to take on his recipe. That kind of persistence is not fueled by hype, it's fueled by endurance. Science explains why most people can't last. In willpower research, psychologists describe something called ego depletion, the idea that self-control and discipline draw from a finite pool of mental energy each day. The mistake people make is trying to run on sheer willpower for too long. Endurance isn't about endless willpower, it's about systems that reduce the need for it. When you design your environment, routines, and schedule to support your mission, you conserve your mental energy for the moments you actually need it. That's how you stay in the fight for years without burning out. So if you want to never give up, you must train for the long game. Set a sustainable pace, push yourself, but not at the expense of tomorrow's energy. Protect your recovery. Rest is not weakness, it's fuel for the next push. Endurance is built in the cycle of effort and renewal. Automate what you can, free your mind from decision overload. Eat the same healthy breakfast, wear a simple work uniform, have a fixed morning ritual, save your mental bandwidth for the mission. Measure progress in years, not weeks. This removes the frustration of slow results and keeps you focused on the big picture. Remember, most people quit not because the goal was impossible, but because they couldn't imagine still working for it a year from now. Endurance is the antidote to that. When you commit to the long game, short-term wins and losses stop controlling your mood. A bad week is just a week. A rejection is just a pebble on the road, not the end of it. And here's the hidden advantage. Endurance makes you dangerous in a way most people will never be. When others realize you're still here after they've given up, they start to doubt themselves. Your consistency becomes its own form of intimidation. People begin to expect you to finish because they see you've outlasted everyone else. So tell yourself now, I'm not here for a season. I'm here until the job is done. I am unshakable. I am built for the long game. Because persistence without endurance is a candle in the wind, bright for a moment, gone in the next. But persistence with endurance, that's a force that can wear down mountains. If you want to live by the law of never giving up, you must build more than stamina in your body. You must build immunity in your mind, because the most dangerous threats to persistence are not exhaustion, not even failure. The most dangerous threats are doubt and outside noise. Here's the reality. You can be moving strong toward your goal. You can have momentum in your favor, but one sharp comment, one discouraging voice, one piece of criticism at the wrong time can send you spiraling. Not because they're right, but because you gave their words access to your belief system. That's the leak you must seal permanently. Every person who has stayed in the fight long enough to win has learned to protect their mental space as fiercely as a soldier protects a stronghold. Henry Ford was told by multiple experts that the V8 engine could not be built in a single block. He instructed his engineers to keep working for 2 straight years until they proved him right. If Ford had let its impossible penetrate his mind, the work would have stopped in month 2. The innovation that changed the automotive industry would never have existed. The truth is, your mind is constantly under siege. Every day you are absorbing signals from the people you talk to, from the media you consume, from the environment you stand in. And if you do not filter those inputs, they will shape you. The human brain is suggestible. It doesn't just believe what is true, it believes what is repeated. If you're constantly surrounded by voices saying it's too hard, it's not worth it, you can't do that, you will eventually echo them unless you actively build immunity. So how do you do it? You apply the same principles as physical health. To resist disease, you strengthen your immune system. To resist doubt, you strengthen your mental defenses. Curate your circle. Remove chronic doubters and complainers from your immediate space. This isn't arrogance, it's preservation. Doubt is contagious. Surround yourself with builders, not critics. Control your inputs. Replace gossip, toxic news cycles, and endless scrolling with books, lectures, and conversations that fuel your mission. Reinforce your belief daily. Speak your goals aloud. Repeat affirmations not for hype but for reinforcement. Every repetition is a brick in the wall of your mental fortress. Document your wins. Keep a visible record of progress, even small victories. On the hard days, you'll need this proof to remind yourself that you are moving forward. Think about the greats. Serena Williams didn't become one of the most dominant athletes in history by listening to every critic who told her she was done. She trained with a mental filter so strong that she could walk onto a court after months away and still play like she had never left. Thomas Edison didn't call himself a failure after 10,000 failed prototypes. He had a mental immune system that interpreted each failure as progress data, nothing more. Without this immunity, you'll be pulled off your path by every storm of opinion. You'll start chasing other people's timelines, doubting your own progress, and questioning your mission. With it, you become untouchable. Criticism rolls off, doubt dies before it reaches your core. Your belief stays intact no matter how hostile the environment becomes. And here's the thing, mental immunity doesn't mean you never hear negativity, it means you don't absorb it. Just as a strong immune system destroys a virus before it can spread, a strong mind rejects harmful ideas before they take root. You might hear you can't, but inside your system instantly translates it to watch me. From now on, I want you to treat your mental space as sacred ground. No unvetted voice enters, no casual negativity gets through the gate. This is not about being fragile, it's about being so committed to your purpose that you refuse to let unqualified opinions rewrite it. Say this now, I guard my mind like I guard my life. Doubt does not enter, negativity does not take root. My mission is too important to be polluted, because if you don't build this immunity, you will spend more time fighting the noise than building the dream. But if you do, if you make your belief system untouchable, you'll find that persistence becomes easier, not because the road is smooth, but because your mind is unshaken. If you want to stay in the fight for years, if you want to carry the banner of never give up without burning out, you need to understand the power of small wins. Persistence is not sustained by massive victories every week. That's not how reality works. In the real world, breakthroughs are rare. Milestones take months or years to reach, and if you're waiting for those big moments to fuel you, you'll run out of motivation long before you cross the finish line. Small wins are the fuel for the long game. They are the proof that progress is happening, even when the scoreboard says otherwise. The problem is most people ignore them. They look at the mountain and feel overwhelmed because they can't climb it in one leap, forgetting that a mountain is climbed one deliberate step at a time. Psychologists have studied this. Harvard researcher Teresa Amabile calls it the progress principle, the idea that the single most powerful motivator in human performance is seeing progress in meaningful work, no matter how small. When you track and celebrate small wins, your brain releases dopamine, which boosts focus, resilience, and the drive to keep going. In other words, progress is addictive, but only if you notice it. Look at elite athletes. The runner doesn't just celebrate breaking a personal best time, they celebrate shaving off 0.1 seconds in training. The powerlifter doesn't just celebrate a championship, they celebrate every 2.5 kilo grease on the bar. They know that without those incremental victories, the big ones never arrive. And here's the connection to never giving up. When you build the habit of noticing small wins, you create a steady stream of motivation that carries you through the plateaus. When the big result is still far away, those wins become your evidence that the work is paying off. They make quitting harder because you can see that you've already invested too much to stop. Here's how to apply this right now. Define your micro goals. Break your mission into steps you can measure in days, not months. If you're building a business, a micro goal might be sending 10 pitches a day. Track daily progress. Use a journal, app, or wall chart. Make it visible. Let yourself see the streak grow. The human brain hates breaking a visible chain of success. Celebrate without complacency. When you hit a micro goal, acknowledge it. A quick note in your log, a moment of gratitude. Then immediately set the next one. Run review weekly. Every 7 days, look back at your list of wins. This turns vague, I'm working hard, into concrete, I'm moving forward. Consider the story of Admiral William McRaven, who famously said in his University of Texas commencement speech, "If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed." Why? Because accomplishing a small task first thing in the morning builds momentum for the rest of the day. One small win leads to another, and soon you're stacking victories before most people have even started. The truth is, your persistence is built in these tiny daily commitments. Without them, you'll measure progress only by the final outcome, and when that outcome takes longer than expected, you'll be tempted to quit. With them, you'll see that progress is not an event, it's a trail of small wins leading to something huge. And here's the deeper magic: small wins compound. Like interest in a bank account, each small victory builds on the last. Over months and years, the effect is exponential. The person who tracks and celebrates their micro goals will have more momentum, more confidence, and more resilience than someone who only chases the finish line. From this moment forward, make a pact with yourself. No win is too small to count. No progress is invisible. You will notice, record, and honor every forward step, because that's how you build the evidence that quitting is not an option. Say it now: I measure progress every day. I stack wins. I build momentum on purpose. I will not stop because I can see I am moving forward. Because persistence is not just about refusing to give up, it's about giving yourself constant proof that staying in the fight is working. If you want to become the kind of person who truly never gives up, you must learn to love what most people run from, the grind, not the highlight reel, not the applause, not the moment when the trophy is in your hands. I'm talking about the repetition, the monotony, the daily work that feels invisible to everyone but you. Most people chase excitement. They start strong because the idea is fresh, the vision is vivid, and the work feels new. But the grind strips all of that away. The grind is when the work becomes predictable, when the tasks are repetitive, when the fun has burned away, and all that's left is discipline. And this is where most people start to drift because they confuse boring with pointless. But here's the truth. The grind is not the enemy, it's the forge. Every master in every field built their greatness in the grind. Michael Jordan didn't become the best basketball player in the world during NBA Finals games. He became the best during thousands of unseen practice hours, running drills until they were burned into muscle memory. The grind is where the skills that carry you under pressure are built. There's a reason Navy SEAL training is intentionally repetitive and grueling. It's not just about physical fitness, it's about conditioning the mind to operate under extreme repetition and discomfort without breaking. If you can show up fully on day 50 when it feels the same as day 1, you have an advantage over almost everyone else in the world. In psychology, this is tied to deliberate practice, the focused, repetitive rehearsal of skills with the goal of continuous improvement. Anders Ericsson's research shows that elite performers in music, sports, and business aren't simply talented, they've logged thousands of hours in targeted, repetitive practice. The grind is the path, so here's your choice. You can resent the grind and let it drain you, or you can reframe it and let it sharpen you. When you see the grind as proof that you're still in the fight, you stop craving constant novelty. You start finding pride in the fact that you're doing what most people are too impatient to do. Here's how to embrace it. Shift your definition of progress. In the grind, improvement is microscopic. It might be a 1% better performance today than yesterday. That's still progress. Build ritual around repetition. Create a consistent startup routine so your brain knows it's time to lock in. This reduces resistance to starting. Run your streaks, not just peaks. Count how many days you've shown up, not just how many big goals you've hit. This builds identity around consistency. Runja detach from constant results. Accept that the grind's value often shows up later, when the skills you built under repetition suddenly win you an opportunity. Think of Serena Williams hitting thousands of serves in an empty stadium. Think of Warren Buffett reading annual reports for hours every day, year after year, before making a single investment decision. These are not glamorous actions, they are not thrilling, but they are the foundation of their dominance. When you embrace the grind, you unlock something most people never discover, the ability to move forward without needing constant emotional spikes. You stop being a slave to motivation and start becoming a product of discipline. And once discipline takes over, quitting becomes nearly impossible, because showing up is no longer a decision, it's just who you are. Say this to yourself. I show up whether it's exciting or not. I work the plan whether it feels good or not. The grind does not break me, it builds me. Because in the end, the grind is not punishment. It's the place where you prove every single day that you are still in the game. And in a world full of people who quit when things stop being fun, that alone will make you unstoppable. If you're going to live by the rule never give up, you must master the voice inside your own head. Because here's the truth most people don't want to admit. It's not the critics outside who break them, it's the critic inside. That quiet voice that says, you're not moving fast enough, this might be pointless, you're not cut out for this. That voice is persistent, and if you don't learn how to control it, it will become the most persuasive reason you ever find to quit. Your self-talk is not just background noise, it's your brain's operating system. Neuroscience tells us that repeated thoughts actually rewire the brain. The more often you say something to yourself, the stronger the neural pathway becomes, until it's not just a thought anymore, it's a belief. And beliefs drive actions. This is why two people can face the same challenge, and one sees it as proof they should stop, while the other sees it as proof they're on the right track. The difference? The story they tell themselves in that moment. Look at the greats. Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian in history, wasn't just training his body, he was training his mind. His coach Bob Bowman taught him to visualize perfect races daily, down to every stroke, every breath, every wall turn. So when he stepped onto the block, the voice in his head wasn't guessing. It was repeating a script he had rehearsed thousands of times. That's self-talk in action, deliberate, directed, and designed to reinforce success. Now compare that to the average person who lets their internal dialogue run unchecked. They speak to themselves in ways they'd never speak to a friend. You're wasting your time, you're behind, this will never work. and then they wonder why their persistence fades. You need a rule. Your inner voice must become your ally, not your enemy. That doesn't mean lying to yourself. It means speaking in a way that keeps you moving forward, no matter what the scoreboard says. Here's how to take control. Audit your self-talk. For 1 week, pay attention to how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake, face a delay, or feel stuck. Write it down. You can't change what you don't notice. Replace the language of finality with the language of progress. Stop saying I failed. Start saying I learned something today. Stop saying I can't. Start saying I can't yet. Install a battle phrase. A short, powerful sentence you repeat the moment doubt appears. Something like, I do not quit, I adjust and advance. This interrupts the spiral of negativity. Rehearse your wins. When you feel weak, recall moments when you overcame something you thought you couldn't. This reminds your mind that you have a history of surviving and moving forward. Muhammad Ali understood this better than most. He said, I am the greatest, long before he ever became champion. He wasn't bragging, he was programming. He was teaching his mind what to expect. And once the mind accepts something as certain, the body finds ways to make it real. You have that same ability, but it requires discipline. It requires catching yourself in the act of self-sabotage and replacing it with self-direction. Because persistence is fragile if the story in your head is working against you, but persistence becomes bulletproof when every word you feed yourself pushes you forward. From now on, your self-talk must pass one test. Does this make me more likely to keep going? If the answer is no, it doesn't get airtime. Say this to yourself right now. My voice is my weapon. I speak progress, not defeat. I command my mind to move forward. Because the day you master the conversation in your head is the day you remove the most common reason people give up. And that's when never give up stops being a slogan and becomes your default mode of operation. If you are truly committed to never giving up, you must learn the difference between quitting the mission and changing the method. Too many people confuse the two. They think that if their original plan doesn't work, the dream is dead. But the reality is this: plans are disposable. The mission is not. Thomas Edison didn't just have one blueprint for the light bulb, he had thousands. Each failure wasn't an ending, it was an instruction to try again in a different way. When you commit to the outcome, you give yourself permission to change everything except the decision to finish. This is where most people fail without realizing it. They tie their identity to a single strategy. When that strategy fails, they feel like they have failed. Instead of adapting, they abandon the whole pursuit. But here's the truth. The most successful people you've ever heard of are masters of adaptation. Take Netflix. In 1997, it was a DVD rental service mailing discs in red envelopes. 10 years later, as the world shifted to streaming, they pivoted their entire model. If they had clung to the original plan out of pride, they would be a relic of the past. Instead, they adapted without quitting and became a global leader. The same applies to individuals. J.K. Rowling's original plan was to be a teacher. That was her safe path, but when life collapsed around her, she adapted. She leaned into her writing, using every rejection letter as a signal to adjust her approach, until her work became one of the best-selling book series in history. In military strategy, there's a concept called flexible persistence, the ability to pursue an objective relentlessly while changing tactics as conditions shift. Armies that can't adapt lose wars, no matter how much courage they have. The same principle applies to you. Here's how to adapt without quitting. Separate the goal from the method. Write your mission in ink, your tactics in pencil. The mission doesn't change. The tactics can change daily if needed. Read the data, not your emotions. A bad week doesn't mean the goal is wrong. It means the method needs refinement. Remove your ego from the process. Learn from those ahead of you. Find models who achieved what you want. Study how they navigated failures and look for patterns you can borrow. Stay mission-focused under pressure. When something breaks, your first question is not, should I quit, but how can I adjust and keep moving? Think of it like a river. If you block a river with rocks, it doesn't stop flowing. It finds another path around the obstacle. It cuts a new channel if it must. That's adaptation without quitting. Too many people build their dreams like a brittle glass statue, beautiful but fragile. One hit, and it's gone. You need to build yours like steel, able to bend without breaking, able to take hits without losing form. And here's the hidden benefit. Adaptation builds resilience faster than anything else. Every time you adjust and keep going, you prove to yourself that you can survive disruption. You teach your subconscious that obstacles are not dead ends, they're detours. And once your mind accepts that, quitting stops being an option entirely. Say this to yourself: my mission is permanent, my methods are flexible, I adjust, adapt, and advance. Because never giving up doesn't mean you bulldoze forward in the exact same way forever. It means you refuse to stop moving forward, no matter how many times you have to change the path to get there. If you want to never give up, you must understand one of the most powerful forces in human behavior: momentum. Momentum is the quiet multiplier that turns small actions into unstoppable motion, and just as it works for you, it can work against you. The problem is that most people underestimate how momentum controls their persistence. They think giving up is one big decision, but in reality, quitting is usually the result of lost momentum. You miss one day, then two, then a week, and soon the effort feels heavier than starting from scratch. The truth is this: resistance, that invisible force that pushes you to procrastinate, hesitate, or stop, is strongest when you are standing still. But once you're in motion, resistance weakens. That's why the hardest step is the first one, and the most dangerous step is the one you don't take. Look at professional athletes. They have off seasons, but they don't go months without touching their sport. Why? Because they know the cost of losing momentum. Even small, consistent training keeps them ready to ramp up when the season starts again. They protect their momentum like it's part of their paycheck, because it is. NASA engineers understand this too. The most energy in any rocket launch is spent in the first minutes breaking free of Earth's gravity. After that, the ship uses far less fuel to maintain speed. The same is true in your mission. Getting started and staying consistent costs far more energy than maintaining motion. This is why the law of never giving up is easier to keep when you stop letting yourself lose speed. Here's how to make momentum your ally. Lower the activation energy. Make starting so easy that you can't talk yourself out of it. If your goal is to work out, keep your shoes by the door. If it's writing, keep your document open. Remove the friction. Set non-negotiable minimums. On bad days, you don't have to do everything, but you do something. 5 push-ups, 1 page written, 1 phone call. This keeps the chain unbroken. Stack actions. Attach a new habit to an existing one. If you already make coffee every morning, use that moment to review your goals for the day. Momentum loves routines. Track your streak, whether on paper or an app. Make your progress visible. Humans hate breaking a streak. Use that to your advantage. History shows that those who win are not always the ones with the most explosive start. They're the ones who keep stacking small actions until the work becomes part of their identity. Jerry Seinfeld's "Don't Break the Chain" method is a perfect example. He committed to writing jokes every day, marking each day on a calendar. Over time, the desire to keep the streak alive became stronger than the temptation to skip a day. The result? Decades of consistent output that made him one of the most successful comedians of all time. The danger is letting the opposite happen, letting negative momentum take over. Skipping one workout makes the second one easier to skip. Missing one sales call makes a week of missed calls feel inevitable. You must treat this like a fire. It's easier to keep it burning than to restart it from cold ash. From this moment forward, your standard is simple. Never stop completely. Rest if you must, slow down if you must, but never let the motion die. Even a crawl keeps you in the game, and from a crawl it's much easier to stand again. Say this now: I protect my momentum. I do not stop cold. I move every day, no matter how small the step. Because when you build unstoppable momentum, quitting becomes unnatural, and staying in the fight becomes your default. If you want to never give up, you must stop treating persistence as something you do and start treating it as something you are. Because here's the truth: actions follow identity. When you see yourself as the kind of person who always finishes, quitting is no longer an option you debate. It's simply not part of your operating system. Most people reverse this. They wait for proof before they claim the identity. They think, once I succeed, then I'll see myself as persistent. But that's backwards. The most resilient people in history adopted the identity before they had the evidence, and that identity is what carried them through the parts where evidence was nowhere in sight. Muhammad Ali didn't wait until he was the heavyweight champion to call himself the greatest. He declared it years earlier, and then built a career that matched the claim. That wasn't arrogance, it was identity setting. He was giving his subconscious a role to live up to. When you declare who you are, your brain works to align your actions with that declaration. Psychologists call this self-consistency theory, the principle that humans are driven to behave in ways that match their self-image. If you see yourself as a finisher, it will actually feel wrong to leave something undone. If you see yourself as a quitter, it will feel natural to walk away when things get hard. Think about it. The runner who identifies as a disciplined athlete doesn't negotiate with themselves about whether to train. Training is what they do because it's who they are. The entrepreneur who identifies as a problem solver doesn't crumble at setbacks, they see them as part of the job description. If you want to live never give up as a lifestyle, you must lock in an identity that matches it. Here's how. Choose your identity statement, a short, definitive sentence about who you are in this context. Example: I am the person who finishes what I start. Write it down. Repeat it daily, not as a wish but as a fact. You are programming your subconscious to accept it as law, right or plead law. Match your smallest actions to it. If you say you are a finisher, finish the small things, the email, the workout, the conversation. You're proving your identity in micro ways. Right or plead, right or plead, right or plead law. Shall plead, right or plead, right or plead law. One folk phone mostrupt, one folk phone mostrupt, conno. When you feel tempted to walk away early, remember, that's not who you are anymore. This is the exact method James Clear outlines in Atomic Habits. You change not by chasing outcomes, but by becoming the type of person who produces those outcomes naturally. Persistence, when tied to identity, becomes effortless. You don't have to motivate yourself into it every time. You simply act in alignment with who you already believe you are. Consider Abraham Lincoln. He didn't see himself as a politician trying to win an election. He saw himself as a servant of a cause greater than himself. That identity carried him through countless electoral defeats, public criticism, and the weight of a divided nation, because quitting would have been a violation of who he believed he was. Here's the trap you must avoid: letting your past identity dictate your future persistence. If you've been someone who gives up in the past, you may have internalized that as part of who you are. But identity is not fixed, it's chosen. And the moment you decide to write a new one, your actions can begin to reflect it. From this moment forward, I want you to speak your persistence into your identity. Say, I am the person who sees things through. I do not quit. Finishing is who I am. Because when persistence becomes part of your identity, it stops being an act of willpower and starts being your nature. And when it's your nature, never giving up is no longer a decision you have to make. It's simply the only way you know how to live. Even the most relentless people, the champions, the founders, the pioneers, have moments where quitting feels easier than continuing. Don't let the highlight reels fool you. Persistence is not the absence of doubt. It's the ability to recover quickly when doubt spikes and quitting starts to look like relief. The truth is, never giving up doesn't mean you'll never want to give up. It means you've built the tools to survive those moments and come out stronger. Let's be honest. There will be days when your progress feels invisible, your energy is gone, and the thought of continuing feels like dragging a weight uphill in the dark. There will be moments when the voice in your head whispers, "What's the point?" If you've ever been there, you're not broken, you're human. But here's where you separate yourself from the majority. You have a plan for these moments so they don't become permanent decisions. Look at the greats. Michael Jordan walked away from basketball in 1993, worn down by grief and fatigue. But that wasn't the end. He reset, recovered, and came back to lead the Chicago Bulls to 3 more championships. That's recovery from a near-quitting moment. Howard Schultz, the man who built Starbucks into a global brand, almost shut the company down in the early years after a failed expansion drained resources. Instead, he used that low point to reevaluate the model, rally investors, and push forward. Here's the pattern. The near-quitting moment is often a crossroads, and the people who win have a system for what to do when they arrive there. Here's yours. Pause, don't stop. When the urge to quit hits, take a break before you make a decision. Fatigue can distort reality. A single night's sleep, a walk outside, or a workout can give you enough clarity to keep going. Return to your why. Keep your purpose written down and visible. In a low moment, read it aloud. Remind yourself why you started and why quitting would cost you more than continuing. Review your progress record. Have a list, journal, or visual tracker of what you've already achieved. In a quitting moment, looking at how far you've come can reframe how far you have left. Reach out to your inner circle. The right voices, mentors, allies, accountability partners can help you see past the temporary emotions of exhaustion or doubt. There's a psychological reason this works. In cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a concept called thought distancing, separating yourself from the intensity of the current emotion so you can see the bigger picture. By stepping back, you remember that the urge to quit is temporary, but the cost of quitting is permanent. And here's the truth you must burn into your mind. A near-quitting moment is not a failure, it's a training ground. Every time you face one and choose to keep going, you increase your resistance to the next one. You harden your mental armor. You prove to yourself that you can survive the urge to walk away. Even elite soldiers face this. In US Navy SEAL training, they have a brass bell you can ring to quit at any time. It's right there, tempting them when the pain is high. The ones who make it through aren't the ones who never think about ringing it, they're the ones who stare at it and keep moving anyway. So when you find yourself at the edge, staring at your own bell, remember, you don't have to quit just because your feelings suggest it. You can pause, breathe, recover, and return with more clarity and commitment than before. Say this now. When the urge to quit comes, I pause, I recover, I return stronger, I finish what I start. Because the urge to quit is temporary, but the pride of not giving in lasts for the rest of your life. If you truly commit to never giving up, you gain an advantage most people never even try to use: time. Because here's the secret. In every field, most people don't lose because they were beaten. They lose because they left. They got tired, they got distracted, they got impatient. They took themselves out of the race long before it was over. And that's where you win. Not just by being better, but by being the one still standing when everyone else has stepped aside. Look at the numbers. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, about 20% of new businesses fail in their first year. By the 5-year mark, roughly half are gone. And by the 10-year mark, only about 30% remain. That means if you simply refuse to quit for a decade, you've already beaten 70% of your competition without even talking about talent. That's the power of endurance over time. History is full of examples. Walt Disney went bankrupt twice before his studio found lasting success. If he had stopped after the second collapse, there would be no Disney empire. Colonel Harlan Sanders, founder of KFC, didn't start franchising his chicken recipe until his 60s. He heard no over 1,000 times before the first yes. But because he outlasted the people who told him to give up, his name is now global. Here's the truth: competition naturally thins over time. The loudest starters burn out, the fastest starters crash, the hype fades, and the field gets quieter and emptier until the only people left are the ones too stubborn to leave. That's when opportunities start falling to you, not because you were the first choice, but because you were still in position when the door opened. This is why persistence is a weapon. It's not just about enduring hardship, it's about strategically surviving longer than the people who want the same thing you do. If you can keep moving when they stop, you win by default. Here's how to make time your ally. Schwann's think in decades, not days. If you expect instant results, you'll quit when they don't come. Commit to a horizon so far ahead that short-term setbacks feel irrelevant. Schwann, stay visible. Keep showing up, producing, posting, networking. The longer you're in the game, the more chances you have to be seen at the right time. Focus on durability over speed. It's better to move steadily for 10 years than to sprint for 10 months and collapse. Mark your survival milestones. Each year you stay in, acknowledge it. That's another layer of advantage over the people who dropped out. Think of persistence like erosion. A river doesn't carve a canyon in a week, it carves it over centuries. By showing up every single day without fail, your competition is the rock, you are the water, and over time, water always wins. This is why never giving up is more than personal pride. It's a business strategy, a creative advantage, and a leadership edge. People start to notice the one who refuses to leave. They trust your stability, they invest in your consistency, they bet on you because you've proven you won't disappear when it gets hard. Say this now: I will outlast, I will still be here when others have gone. My persistence will win where speed could not. Because time is a test most will fail. But if you commit to staying in the game longer than anyone else, you've heard the stories, you've seen the patterns. From part 1 to now, every lesson has pointed to one truth: your ability to never give up is the foundation for everything you will ever achieve. Not talent alone, not luck alone, not connections alone. Persistence is the multiplier that turns all of those into something that lasts. Now in this final part, it's time to fuse it all together into one standard, one law, one command you will carry into every single day of your life. Here's what you need to understand. The world does not reward potential, it rewards proof. And proof comes from staying in the fight long enough for your results to be undeniable. Most people will never see their own breakthrough because they surrendered at the edge of it. They let tiredness, doubt, or impatience talk them out of the next step, the one that would have changed everything. That cannot be you. Not after everything you've learned here. You've armed yourself with strategies to survive doubt, boredom, failure, and fatigue. You've built an identity that rejects quitting. You've made peace with the grind. You've learned to adapt, to protect your momentum, and to turn time into an ally. Now your only job is to live it. Not once, not for a season, every single day until the mission is complete. From this day forward, your default setting is simple: keep moving. It doesn't matter if it's an inch or a mile. It doesn't matter if it's perfect or messy. The size of the step is irrelevant. The act of stepping is everything, because persistence is not about how fast you move, it's about not stopping. And when you refuse to stop, you become the kind of person the world cannot ignore. Here is your final declaration: I do not quit. I do not surrender. My mission is permanent. My methods may change, my pace may change, but my movement never stops. I finish what I start, I outlast, I endure. I win because I remain. Say it again until it's not a sentence but a part of your DNA. And when the world tests you, because it will, you will not crumble. You will remember every part of this journey. You will remember that you've already prepared for doubt, for setbacks, for failure, for boredom, for exhaustion. You will remember that this is the path you chose, and no force on earth has the power to make you walk away from it. You will stand in that moment, look resistance in the eye, and take the next step. Not because it's easy, not because it's comfortable, but because never giving up is no longer something you say, it's who you are. This is the final command. Stay in the fight. Every small expense, every moment of lack, if you're constantly noticing what's missing, you're reinforcing scarcity. The truth is, wealthy people don't just have more money, they carry a different mindset. Imagine walking through life with quiet confidence, no more desperation, no more playing small, just a deep belief in abundance. In this video, I'll teach you how to train your mind to act as if you're already rich, so you naturally attract opportunities, success and wealth, because once you shift your identity, your reality starts to match it, and the world responds in kind. 1. The power of perception, an in-depth exploration. In today's world, wealth is often reduced to tangible metrics, money in the bank, cars, homes, and other material possessions. However, true wealth goes beyond what you own. It resides in how you perceive yourself and how others perceive you. The way you think about your potential, your success, and your value shapes your reality. The most important step in attracting wealth is to see yourself as abundant, even before any material evidence is present. This mental shift can be transformative and set the foundation for long-term success. Perception plays a critical yet often overlooked role in wealth creation. People tend to associate being rich with flashy possessions or high-status symbols, but true wealth lies in an individual's mindset and confidence. Wealthy people don't simply display material wealth, they embody an aura of success that extends into their daily interactions. They walk with confidence, and that confidence attracts opportunities and relationships that further fuel their success. Your internal perception of yourself dictates how you present yourself to the world. If you see yourself as abundant, others will recognize you as such. This is the law of attraction at play. You attract what you believe you deserve. The way you carry yourself, even when your bank account doesn't match your aspirations, will influence how people treat you. Those around you may offer opportunities or guidance that propel you toward your goals. The concept of the law of attraction, popularized by The Secret, suggests that we attract what we focus on. But this principle is rooted in psychological science. Our beliefs and perceptions shape our behaviors, and behaviors ultimately shape our outcomes. If you constantly view yourself as someone who struggles or lacks, your actions will align with that belief. You might hesitate to take risks, second-guess decisions, or miss opportunities because of fear or doubt. Conversely, perceiving yourself as abundant and successful, even before you see tangible results, instills confidence. This confidence drives you to take bolder actions that align with your aspirations, eventually manifesting your desired reality. This mindset doesn't guarantee instant wealth, but it positions you to see opportunities you might have missed otherwise. A growth mindset backed by perception encourages forward momentum, improving the chances of success in career and finance. Confidence is an essential component of perception. It's not just about feeling good about your abilities, it's about recognizing your inherent worth in the grand scheme of things. Confidence is the internal belief that you deserve success and that you are capable of creating value. This belief is magnetic, drawing people, opportunities, and success toward you. Confidence doesn't mean pretending to be something you're not. It means aligning with the truth of your potential. Research from the University of Melbourne shows that individuals with high self-confidence tend to perform better in negotiations, social settings, and business dealings. Confidence in yourself correlates directly with external success. When you carry this internal belief, people naturally treat you with more respect and are more likely to invest in you, whether through business partnerships or personal connections. Wealth is not just about financial assets. It encompasses health, relationships, skills, and mindset. Even without millions in the bank, a person rich in knowledge, connections, and opportunities can create wealth in various forms. For instance, two people may have the same financial resources, but one views wealth as a means for growth, while the other hoards it or uses it for status. The former will likely continue to evolve, whereas the latter may stagnate. When you act as though you are already rich, you adopt the lifestyle of someone successful. This mindset shapes your behavior, influencing the decisions you make and how you interact with others. Over time, this shift in perception turns into tangible results. True wealth is a reflection of your internal state, not merely your external circumstances. Perception doesn't just affect how others see you, it affects how you see the world. If you view your life through a lens of abundance, setbacks become challenges to overcome, not permanent obstacles. This mental shift is empowering as it enables you to approach difficulties with a growth mindset. On the flip side, if you perceive yourself as someone who's always struggling, your emotional state becomes clouded by scarcity. You may feel victimized by circumstances, draining your energy and resilience. When challenges arise, a mindset of abundance helps you see them as stepping stones. You build resilience, as setbacks no longer define your potential, but rather serve as lessons to learn from. This shift from a mindset of lack to one of abundance is key to cultivating the mental toughness required to thrive in adversity. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, provides a scientific foundation for the power of perception. Studies show that positive thinking and visualization can enhance cognitive functions, improve problem-solving abilities, and foster creativity. These cognitive abilities are essential for success. When you repeatedly perceive yourself as abundant and capable, your brain begins to form neural pathways that support those beliefs. Over time, these pathways become stronger, making it easier for you to act confidently and think strategically. As your brain rewires itself to match your perception, you become more adept at creating opportunities and navigating challenges. Perception doesn't only impact you, it influences those around you as well. When you perceive yourself as wealthy, this perception spreads, your energy becomes contagious. People begin to see you as someone capable and successful, which can open doors to valuable connections and collaborations. The ripple effect of your perceived abundance creates a positive feedback loop that attracts even more opportunities and success. Furthermore, projecting abundance can inspire others to see their own potential. This shared energy boosts collective growth, as people become more confident in their abilities, and they in turn contribute to your success. As you become more successful, you also lift others around you, creating a community of like-minded individuals who can support and collaborate with you. 2. Confidence breeds opportunities. Confidence has an incredible power to shape our interactions and outcomes in life. When you walk into a room, whether it's a casual gathering or a professional setting, the way you carry yourself speaks volumes before you even say a word. Imagine yourself at a dinner party where a conversation is unfolding. There's someone in the group who stands out, not because they're loud or dominating the conversation, but because their words are delivered with confidence. They don't need to boast about their achievements. Their self-assurance is evident in the way they speak, the value they provide, and the ease with which they carry themselves. This is the type of presence that attracts opportunities. When you act as if you are already rich, not just financially, but rich in potential, knowledge, and self-belief, you begin to embody the same self-assurance. You don't need to flaunt anything or seek validation from others. Your energy and demeanor communicate success in a way that naturally draws people in. Confidence makes you magnetic. It signals to others that you are someone worth paying attention to, someone who has something valuable to offer. Opportunities don't just come because you're trying to impress or because you're putting yourself out there in an exaggerated way. When you exude genuine confidence, the opportunities appear because people recognize your worth without you needing to sell it. The best business deals, collaborations, and even friendships often come from the unspoken things we communicate. Think about it. People are more likely to want to partner with you, learn from you, or invest in you if they believe you have something of value to offer, not just financially but intellectually and emotionally as well. This is where the power of acting as if you're already rich becomes evident. It's not about waiting for a future financial situation to define who you are. It's about owning your worth and acting in alignment with that perception, regardless of where you stand financially. The way you present yourself in social or professional situations is just as important, if not more, than the tangible assets you possess. Wealth isn't only material, it's a mindset, an attitude that informs how you approach life. When you carry yourself with confidence, people see that and recognize that you're someone who knows what they're doing, someone who is worth engaging with. Research has shown that confidence can actually affect how we are perceived by others and how we perform in different situations. For instance, a study from the Journal of Applied Psychology found that confident individuals were more likely to be hired and promoted because their assertiveness and self-assuredness signaled leadership qualities. Confidence helps in all areas of life, from personal relationships to career growth. It has the power to attract opportunities that you may not have even anticipated. People with confidence can often convince others to invest in their ideas, their projects, or their future because they believe in themselves first. This belief is contagious. It makes others feel like they're betting on a winning horse. Conversely, those who lack confidence often struggle to gain trust or interest because they project doubt or uncertainty. The difference is subtle but significant. Confidence doesn't need to scream for attention. It naturally draws others in because it conveys a sense of reliability and assurance that makes people comfortable following your lead. When you act as if you're already rich in confidence, the opportunities will start to come to you not because you're